Hello, Omar here. Welcome to another awesome SVGs video. Today I'll show you how to create this layered card that features several print then cut images, as well as an embossed sentiment written with your machine. Could be your Cricut Explorer, your Cricut Maker, and I'll show you how to decorate the panels using watercolors and finish the inside of the card. First of all, you will have to upload your images to Design Space. For that, click on Upload Image and then browse. Go to the directory where your files are stored. Select the first image. Click on Simple. Don't worry if that turns gray. It doesn't matter, it won't print gray. Once the outline has loaded, click on Save, and there it is. You have your image. Let's upload one more. Click on Upload Image. Browse, select your next image, click on Simple. Don't worry too much about the grayish tone that your image turns into. Then click on Continue, and once it loads, click on Save. There you have your second image. Do the same for the shellfish and also for the starfish. Also, you will have to upload your SVG layers. Do not confuse your SVG layers with your reference image. And once you have uploaded the SVG and all 4 images, click on each one of them and click on Insert Images. They will come up your grid. And there are some things that we have to change here. Change the width of the shellfish to 1 inch. This will fit right there. And next select the flower, the underwater flower, and also change the width, but this time to 2 inches. For the mermaid, you will have to adjust the height of the image to 2 inches. And for the starfish, you will also have to adjust the height to 1 inch. Now that all your print and cut images are resized, you'll have to attach the writing layer to the cutting layer beneath for the black banner. So for that, select your SVG layers and click on Ungroup. This will take your layers to the top, and select the topmost layer. Click on the scissors icon that you see there and change the layer attributes to right. I like to use a lighter color for my writing in order to see the writing on top of the black banner. And next you will have to attach the writing layer to the cutting layer. So for that, draw a rectangle around both of them. Make sure you have not selected any other layer and click on Attach. There you go. You are ready to cut and print then cut. Click on Make It, and you will see that your images are right on the mat with the registration marks. It's a good thing that Design Space lets you rearrange things here and there, and the registration marks change accordingly. There's your base layer, and here is the black banner with the writing on top attached on the same mat. Next, click on Continue and proceed to put your Ranger embossed pen on your Cricut Explorer. This pen fits perfectly on your pen adapter, and you don't need any other devices in order to write with that pen. Always prep your cardstock with anti-static powder before taking it to your machine. This way you will make sure that the embossing powder sticks where the ink is and doesn't go anywhere else. Take your banner and put the embossing powder on top of the ink. Flick it a couple of times to get rid of any excess powder. And it's always useful to take a brush and get rid of any excess powder. Next, take your heat tool and heat emboss your sentiment. There you go. For your card base, you'll have to score it to 5.5 inches. Make sure you fold it the right way. The side of the cutout that has only one curve goes to the right. And you can use the video for reference. Next, prepare your images for the coloring. I always like to run my cutouts through my embossing machine using an A plate, a B plate, an embossing mat, putting my images on top facing up, and finally a B plate. This will flatten out the edges that sometimes have points that stick up, giving them kind of like a steel cut, a steel die cut look. Now for the coloring, most of the time I start working with my lightest color and work my way up to my darkest and then my lightest at the end. But for the eyes, I always like to work on my darkest, my medium, my lightest color, and then going back to my medium and my lightest, just to get a good blending. For the tail, I used a very light base color. It's a BG10, and then I painted some shadows, and I ended up using a very dark color for the shadows, and I also added some dots on the top of the tail to kind of make them look like they were scales. Go back with your lightest, and that's all you have to do for the tail. That's how you achieve very good contrast. I didn't want too much contrast for the bra, and my marker was a bit juicy, so kind of tap it out on a piece of paper. By the way, I always like to work on top of a piece of paper. I think it kind of absorbs the color if it goes off your paper. Now for my skin, I used a very light skin color. This is an E00, and worked my way up with also E tones, earth tones. If you are wondering why I'm not using the same family of colors, that is because I used to choose my colors, I like to work with the Sandy Alnox hex chart. That gives you a great idea of what colors blend with each other. And then going back with my lightest, I blend everything a little bit. This is a very small image, so you don't have to do much blending. Now here you will see me working the hair. Start with your highlights. Just figure out where you want your highlights. And then work with your mid-tone, which is a V04. And just to have a good idea of where you want your colors to be. And then with your darkest, for this I always like to do strokes with a flickering motion, just to get thinner lines where the highlight is. Always do the strokes following the hairs. Then go back with your lightest a couple of times just to blend everything out. And finally go back with your darkest tone, just so you have clean strokes. Remember to kind of lift pen at the end. I forgot the blush on the cheeks, so I used an R20 for that. You can use your lightest skin color to kind of blend that, but I didn't want to, so I just left it that way. Now for the mouths, I always use an E4, and I didn't want to select any shadow color for that, so I just used a C05 to apply the shadows. Finally, I drew all my highlights using a white Signo Uniball pen. This is a thick point pen. You will get thicker lines than with a jelly roll, for example. Just do some lines and some dots to give you the highlights. And finally, I used some clear glitter Wink of Stella brush pen to kind of glitter everything out. I used it on the eyes, on the bra, the tail. Now for the hair and other details, it's a good idea to use colored pencils. A very sharp point will help you achieve this hair-like texture. Just do some very light strokes with your colored pencil. It's a good idea to use colored pencils also to get a nice contrast on your images. And you can even use your colored pencils to kind of erase those mistakes that you sometimes make with your white gel pen. Just go over with your colored pencil and then correct it if you want to. I also added some contrast to the eyes with a black pencil here. If you erase those white gel pen marks, just redraw them. Next, I painted the shellfish. I used warm grays, just figuring out where my shadows would be. And those creases, I used a W5 and went back with a W1 just towards the base of the shellfish, and ended up blending everything with a W0. I also used my clear glitter Wink of Stella brush pen, but then I decided I needed some color on the shellfish, so I used a YR24 to kind of just give it a pop of color. Apply some glitter on top, and if you go out the line, just correct it with your lightest tone like I did there. The underwater flower has a two-tone blending on the leaves because they are so small they won't be able to take too much color. So I used a very light yellow-green color and a darker yellow-green color for the shadows. Because this is a small image, I did not do any blending to the leaves. And for the petals of the flower, I went with a red tone. This is an R00. Cap went off a little bit. And then I used a very dark fuchsia. This is called Deep Magenta. It's an RV17 for the center of the flower. And then I went with my R22. And here you'll see me make a mistake. I saw a lot of ink coming off the pen, but I didn't listen. And then I put it on top of the paper again, and everything got kind of messed up, but I'll show you how to correct it. You don't have to throw it away. Keep going with your R22, squeeze it a little bit on top of a scrap piece of paper, and then blend back your color with your lightest. This is an R00. And with my mid-tone, I just kind of extended those strokes towards the lightest color. Went back with my lightest to kind of blend that out, and then used more of my magenta on the center of the petals. Now you can do two things to correct your mistakes. You can use a colorless blender, which sometimes takes a lot of time, but I like to use a jelly roll pen. This is a white gel pen that has a very fine point and lets you correct mistakes. Now remember, if your white gel pen goes on top of the black lines, you can always go back with a black color pencil or with a black marker. Now the center of the flower was painted, but I ended up putting a clear rhinestone on top, so it ended up not showing, but it's a good idea if you don't have the rhinestones to put in the center. With my broad tip white gel pen, this is Signal Uniball, I drew the highlights on the petals. And I wanted a bit more contrast on the leaves, so I used a dark green color pencil. Finished everything out with some Wink of Stella, and went on with my starfish. I used cool gray tones for my starfish. I applied a coat of C00, then added some shadows on the edges with a C9. I thought I was going to be able to kind of blend that with a C3, but it ended up not blending correctly, so I went with my C3 just a little more to the center, and then went with a C5 to kind of blend that C9. Do not worry too much if you go outside the lines. You can always correct that with a white gel pen. After my C5, I used a C3 to kind of blend that out a little bit more, and then I kind of pushed the color away from the center with my C00. Do not worry too much if your colors don't blend correctly, because you will be adding details with a white gel pen on top, and your blending won't be too noticeable. Correct any mistakes with a white gel pen. This is a fine point. It's a jelly roll pen. And then add details with a white gel pen. This is a Signal Uniball with a broad tip. I decided I needed smaller dots around the lines, so I used a jelly roll with a finer tip for those small dots. And as you can see, the blending is barely noticeable here. Apply some clear glitter Wink of Stella to your starfish, and there you have all 4 images ready. Now for the layers of the card that resemble that cave where the mermaid is in, you can leave them as they are, or you can do some details with watercolors. This is a Sakura Koi watercolor set that I got from my brother. It's a travel set that I always take to my vacations to work on my journaling, and draw some highlights with that white watercolor. Make sure you draw them on the correct a side. So go to your reference image that you will download and make sure you are painting the right side of the cardstock. I started with the highlights. By the way, this is a Viscars silicone mat. It's a great working mat. And do the highlights on the top edges, on all the top edges of your images. And I decided I wanted some dark borders on the lower edges. This will give you a lot more dimension. So I mixed some blues and some greens to kind of resemble the cardstock color. And then I decided to add some more details, kind of like plants and seaweeds that are underwater. So using a very light pencil mark, prepare more of that color and just draw leaves and lines to kind of give that underwater feel to your cardstock. You don't have to paint the whole thing. Most of the cardstock will be covered with the top layer, so that's why you drew the pencil marks, and you will just have to decorate the part of the cardstock that is exposed. Now, using a very fine brush, I applied some highlights using Again, white watercolors. Next, start putting your card together. So take your foam tape, this is mounting tape, and put foam tape on the back of the panels. Make sure you put foam tape on the back of those pieces that stick out, those curves that stick out, and don't go too far to the edge because you will see the foam tape, so keep it a quarter of an inch away from the edge. Remove the backing of your pieces. Align both pieces of cardstock together. It's a good idea to put your finger through the holes and kind of align those two together. Next, take the other layers and continue doing the same thing. I decided to glue my images to the layers using liquid glue. This is my go-to glue. Place your flower a little bit off to the top and to the left side and press on the leaves so they stick to the different layers. Do the same with the shellfish. This fits in one layer mostly. And then attach your sentiment using a tape roller. I had to use a piece of foam tape on the back of the top edge just to give it some support. And then I attached my starfish using also double-sided tape. I cut a piece of foam tape that was sticking out. Next, adhere this panel to your card base. Match the hole on the front of the card base with the hole of the bottommost layer. Put plenty of double-sided tape to make sure it sticks correctly. Align it and press. Next, take your mermaid, put it inside the card, and figure a place where you want it. draw reference marks for gluing it later. Put liquid glue on the back of the mermaid. Make sure to cover all the edges and place it following your reference marks. Put an acrylic block on top so it dries flat. Leave it there for a while. Then erase the pencil marks. And to add a little bit more on the outside of the card, I used clear self-adhesive rhinestones. These come in packs of strings of rhinestones with adhesive in the back. So I use my scissors to cut them individually and take them with your tweezers and put them wherever you want. They kind of look like underwater gems on this card. You could do like a necklace on the mermaid also if you want to, or earrings. They are very small and they have very strong glue, so don't worry about them coming off of your card. To finish off the inside of the card, I used the sentiment "You are mermazing" from the My Favorite Things Mermazing stamp set, and I stamped it using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. This is a very fun card. It has a lot of layers and a lot of detail. The embossed sentiment on the front of the card just gives it something extra. I sometimes worry too much about the outside of the card and don't pay too much attention to the inside, and I think this is the perfect combination. Remember that you can download this project free at my blog, www.awesomesvgs.com, and don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Here are a couple more videos you could be interested in. Don't forget to check the products I used that are linked on the video description below, and a lot more information on my blog. Have a great day, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye bye.